What is going on, everybody? It is the Icebreaker here, back with another video for some more NHL hockey content. That time of season has finally arrived. It is my divisional standings predictions for this upcoming NHL season 2025-2026 edition. And like we normally do, we are going to start with the Western Conference, focusing in on my Pacific Division standings predictions. Now, when it comes to the Pacific Division, I still kind of view this as the weakest division in hockey. I mean, for the most part, I don't feel like there's going to be a ton of surprising takes in this video, to be quite frank with you guys. There's just a lot of teams in this division that I'm just don't see a high ceiling with. But with that said, we got to rank every single division. So let's get right into it. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. And let's begin Pacific Division standings predictions. Who do I have at the bottom? No surprise here. I don't think anybody should expect the Sharks to have that great of a season. So coming in last in the division, 8th place in the Pacific, I'm going with the San Jose Sharks to have a bit of an improvement, take a step forward from last season with their 52-point season, being obviously the worst team in the league last year. I still have them as the worst team in the league this season, but I have them with 64 points. There really isn't too much to dissect when it comes to the Sharks. Obviously, they have a ton of young players on their roster, a ton of prospects up and coming. Bright future for sure, but as it currently stands, they're still in the developing phase of their rebuild at the moment. Obviously, Macklin Celebrini is at the head of that. He had a phenomenal rookie season. He was nearly a point per game as an 18-year-old kid coming straight into the NHL. And taking on a top line role with the worst team in the league. And he was phenomenal, honestly. Just if it wasn't for the injuries, he would have had a better case at probably winning the Calder Trophy over Elaine Hudson. But anyway, still, he's a phenom, and he's going to be a top line center for years to come. So they have a great leader in him. Obviously, some other great young players, Will Smith, William Eklund, some good veteran presence that they added. I mean, obviously Tyler Toffoli last offseason, and he was really solid for them this year as well. Jeff Skinner, kind of a low risk, high reward type of signing. I still think that there is some offense left in the tank for him. Added a couple other guys to improve their depth on the blue line, adding John Klingberg, who, coming off an all right season with the Edmonton Oilers. I think he was pretty decent, to be honest, but I don't know if we're going to get a prime like Dallas Stars type of John Klingberg with the San Jose Sharks. However, because of his role, I feel like he'll probably be the guy quarterback in the top power play unit. I could see him having a bit of a resurgence of an offensive year, and also adding Dmitry Orlov as well, even though, both these guys are probably past the prime of their careers. But, it's good veterans to add to that depth on the blue line, because that defense is still not that great. And in terms of the rest of the roster, the Sharks still have some issues in their bottom six, although Michael Misa might make the team out of camp in his very first, as an 18-year-old essentially. That could be something to follow too, and maybe he can be in for a great rookie season as well. But yeah, the offense still has a lot left to be desired, despite having some young, promising talent. And even between the pipes, Yaroslav Askarov is one of the best young goalies in the league, and he has a bright future, very high ceiling as a true number one starter. So he's got a long way to go to develop, as well as the rest of the Sharks team. This is still a team that clearly is still in their rebuild right now. Probably a couple years away at least from being a true threat to making the playoffs in the Western Conference. Really not much else to say about the Sharks team. They're a very young team. They're going to be an exciting team to watch with all the young guys they have, but ultimately they're still probably in line for a top draft pick this upcoming season. And that's why I have them as the worst team in the Pacific Division. Coming in at 7th in the Pacific Division, I got the Seattle Kraken, kind of having more or less the same year as last season. I just don't see a huge breakout coming from this team at all. Basically, I don't see them having a very high ceiling. I have them with 78 points. Honestly, the Kraken are a pretty difficult team to get a true read on, because you look at the team on paper, it's honestly pretty decent. Like, I don't think they have really a position of like major weakness, but at the same time, they don't have a position of major strength either. It's kind of weird to say, but basically mediocre at every position. Massive lack of star talent. Like, they have a lot of good forwards, like a pretty deep team, a lot of guys, honestly, a lot of middle six forwards, I would say, but there's no great asset on that team. Like even on their defense, I mean, Vince Dunn is a good point producer when he's healthy, but again, there's not a lot of game breakers there up front. I mean, Matty Beniers hasn't really gotten back to rookie season Matty Beniers, and I mean, at this point, it's becoming harder and harder to believe what his ceiling actually is if he ever is going to become that true number one center. I mean, I see him having a good season, but again, it's hard to judge. Capo Caco, being hurt in training camp, and he's going to miss likely the first month or so of the season. So I think that definitely doesn't help the Kraken's chances either to make any sort of noise in the Western Conference. Made some good depth additions, Mason Marchment, Frederick Gaudreau, Ryan Lindgren to help that defense. But like I said, not a lot of great talent there. And in goal too, like Joey Decord had a really good season, but to rely on that from him again, I don't know if I trust that necessarily. I really don't know what else to say about this team. Like, I think if everything goes right, like all the guys kind of play by committee, put together a pretty solid team effort. The goaltending remains strong, the defense remains solid, and, they get depth contributions throughout their entire lineup. I could see a world where they can maybe challenge for a playoff spot. But like I said, I don't see a huge ceiling with this team. I still think they have a long way to go for anybody to really take this team seriously. And even when you look at their future, like they have some good prospects, but there's still a lot left to be desired in terms of like what's coming in the pipeline. So Seattle is just in a team that's in a very difficult spot, and I don't really know what they can do to make this team, go to another level at this point. So right now I have them in 7th. I wouldn't be surprised if they finished a bit higher, but I'm just not a huge believer in Seattle at all. So as a result, 78 points on the year, only good enough for 7th in the Pacific, and obviously not making the playoffs. Coming in at 6th in the Pacific Division, I got the Calgary Flames with 79 points. I have them just barely ahead of the Seattle Kraken. I honestly kind of argued between those two teams. At a point, I did have Seattle ahead of Calgary, but I gave Calgary the benefit of the doubt just given the past season that they just had. They put up 96 points, nearly made the playoffs. Obviously, I'm expecting quite a major step back for them. To be honest with you guys, I just think they grossly overachieved. Like Dustin Wolf had a phenomenal rookie season, and even if he can maintain that solid play and be solid, I still think that offensively they're one of the worst teams in the league. And defensively, I don't think they're that much better either. Analytically, they were still a pretty bad team that got outplayed heavily on most nights. And they just found a way to steal points because of that guy between the pipes and Dustin Wolf. And ultimately, he's the reason why I can see the Calgary Flames remaining relevant for this season. And they do have some solid young guys that could potentially break out. I highlighted Matt Coronado in my breakout players video. I think he has the potential to put up over 30 goals this season and could potentially lead the Flames in scoring. Connor Zary could be in for a big season as well if he can remain healthy. Zane Parekh entering his rookie season, if he does make the team, I think will make an immediate impact and definitely do his part to aiding the Flames in terms of the offense. But again, I don't know what his role will be with Rasmus Anderson still on the team. They might be looking to move him, and honestly, that could diminish the defensive depth as well, which could make the Flames a little bit weaker because they have some veteran guys that they could potentially be shipping off. They're a team that I could see kind of moving more into a retooling, younger direction. So that's why I think the Flames are inclined to maybe take a step back. I still think this team is decent. Don't get me wrong. I just, again, like the Seattle Kraken, I don't see a high ceiling with them, and I don't think Dustin Wolf alone can quite do enough to carry the Flames to where they were last season. So I'm projecting quite a bit of a fall off for them and only getting 6th in the division. And not going to qualify for the playoffs yet again, in my opinion. Coming in at 5th in the Pacific Division, I got the Vancouver Canucks, a team that has an okay floor, but I think a much higher ceiling. I just have my own concerns about the team and kind of the direction they're in and basically what they're selling us on the ice. I have them with 88 points. I have them missing the playoffs by quite a bit. I could see them being maybe even as high as like top 3 in the Pacific, just given how weak the division is projected to be. But I have a lot of question marks when it comes to this team, and I know that there's potential with certain guys, but just given the season they had last year and the offseason that they had too, I wasn't a huge fan of it, to be honest with you. For one, obviously, a lot of their success is going to come down to Elias Pettersson and how big of a season he's going to have, because this past season, I know he missed some time, but 15 goals, 45 points for a number one centerman getting paid $11+ million. That's pretty awful, honestly. Like, he needs to be way better than that. I know that there was some locker room issues during the season, and maybe mentally he wasn't all there, probably, but yeah, that's just not going to cut it for his type of talent. We know that he's capable of way more than that. And even like my predictions, like I'm not projecting him to be like back to a point per game, 100-point player. Like, I'm keeping my expectations quite low. I'm a little curious to see like how big of a resurgence he will have. So I'm kind of being modest with my prediction for that. Obviously, Quinn Hughes is the backbone of this team. He is one of the best defensemen in the league, arguably the best defenseman in the league. He's gonna get his numbers, and he's gonna put the team on his back. Obviously, bringing back Brock Besser was huge. I honestly didn't think they were gonna re-sign him, but he's back, and I think he'll be in for a bounce back season himself, because he only had like 25 goals, 50 points, and the year before he had like 40 goals and over 70 points. So I think he can get kind of back to that range. But as for the rest of the forward group, I'm not totally sold on their offensive production. Like, Evander Kane coming over, could light a spark, but I'm not sure where his game is at this stage of his career, especially coming off a very serious injury and basically missed all the entire season last year and only played a bit in the playoffs for the Oilers. Connor Garland's solid. Hedl, again, another guy that can't really stay healthy, even though I feel like he'll have a bigger role in Vancouver, so he could probably produce a little bit more points. Again, the goaltending as well. I mean, Thatcher Demko has had some major injury concerns. When healthy, he's probably a top 5 goaltender in the NHL, but the question has been always that he can't stay healthy. And again, to just assume that everything's okay now, when there were reports as early as last year, or as recent as last year, suggesting that his injury could be career threatening. Yeah, that's a concern for me, but they re-signed him, so obviously they believe he's going to be the backbone of that team once again, and lead them back to the playoffs. I hope that's the case. Again, a lot of question marks when it comes to that. Kevin Lankinen did a solid job as the starter, but I think he's more of a backup, and if he is to take on a bigger role again this season, I think that's not going to bode well for the Canucks. Again, I think they have a higher ceiling, but I'm not quite there with Vancouver. They really need to prove it to me that they can have that big bounce back season. So as a result, I only have them 5th in the division, 88 points. They'll be in the hunt. I think their roster is decent enough to kind of hang around. I think they're capable of making the playoffs, but ultimately I have them missing. So I have them 5th in the Pacific. 4th in the Pacific. This might be one of my bolder takes, but I think the Anaheim Ducks are due to take that next step, and they're going to kind of low-key break out a little bit. I have them with 90 points on the season. Although I do have them falling just shy of the playoffs, I think the fact that they are where I'm expecting them to be in that playoff discussion should be considered a successful season in Anaheim. In terms of what they did this offseason, the Ducks are arguably the most improved team in the entire league entering the 2025-2026 season. Yes, they traded away guys like Trevor Zegras and John Gibson, but they added some pretty solid depth there. I think Chris Kreider is due for a bounce back. It was awful year for him with the Rangers. He still has some game to give. I think he has the type of player build that the Ducks have been needing. I think they have a lot of raw talent, raw skill, and I think Chris Kreider can provide a little bit more grit. And obviously he's good in front of the net. He's made a career of being a good net front presence and a very solid goal scorer. I mean, he had a 50-goal season at one point. He's had several 30-plus goal seasons. I mean, recently had like a 37-goal season before this past season, only getting 22 goals. But he could still put the puck in the net. Ryan Poehling's a decent like 4th-line center addition. But again, they definitely improved down the middle. Mikael Granlund, I think, was a solid add for them as well. And just the young talent that they have, I just feel like there's a lot of guys that are due for breakout seasons. Leo Carlsson obviously being at the forefront of that. I think going into year 3, being the surefire number one center, I think he's due for a massive breakout season. A lot of their young guys I'm just a huge fan of. I think Mason McTavish has a high ceiling as one of the better second line centers for years to come. Cutter Gauthier is another guy who I think is in for a pretty big season as well, getting top 6 minutes, and he came along towards the second half of the season last year, I recall. So I think he's definitely going to build off of that. But the most important thing, and I think this was kind of what held the Ducks back, especially offensively, was coaching. It's been well documented that Greg Cronin didn't do a good job. A lot of people would say that he was the guy that kind of halted a lot of the young guys' development and really held them back offensively. And then you bring in a guy like Joel Quenneville, who is a winning coach. I mean, he was a guy that was pivotal in helping the Chicago Blackhawks build up to the championship level team that they were, and ultimately winning 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years. Now, I'm not saying that he is going to lead the Ducks to the promised land within the next 2-3 years or anything like that. But the Ducks still have a bright future, and I think with him behind the bench, a lot of guys are going to flourish offensively speaking. And honestly, I think their blue line is destined to be much better as well. I kind of like what they're building there with Olin Zellweger, Pavel Mitsikov, Jackson Lacombe, who had an amazing season last year. He's one of the more underrated defensemen in the league. And Lucas Dostal as the full-time starter between the pipes, who had a really solid year, and I think he's going to continue to improve. And I think at some point he will get to that level where people will consider him as, at the very least, a top 10 goaltender in the NHL. The Ducks, it's just all potential, but unlike other teams in the Pacific, I am very much more confident that the Ducks have the potential to be a bit of a surprise this season. I have them missing the playoffs by a few points, but ultimately I think the Ducks are going to be one of the biggest surprises, have a bit of a breakout season as a whole, and I got them 4th in the Pacific Division, 90-point season for them. So with that, that means I only have 3 teams coming out of the Pacific Division to make the playoffs, but in third, I'm going with the Edmonton Oilers to get 96 points. To be honest with you, 2 straight Stanley Cup finals, they fell short yet again. And in terms of the needs that they needed to address in the offseason, to be frank with you, they just didn't. I mean, they lost quite a bit of depth this offseason. And despite having Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl still on this team, and McDavid, going into the final year of his deal, still unsigned, so that's a bit concerning. But yeah, they lost a lot of depth, like I said. Andrew Mangiapane's decent. Curtis Lazar, again, you can plug those guys in your bottom 6, but I'm not as high on the Oilers as maybe others. I mean, again, they didn't address their goaltending. I'm not confident at all with Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard running it back with those two. Now, the core is going to do their thing. Like I said, McDavid, Draisaitl, 2 of the best players in the league. The Nugent Hopkins is still solid. Evan Bouchard's a top point-producing guy. Zach Hyman, I think, will have a better season than last year, although I believe he's going to miss the start of the season. I think he was coming off an injury, so we'll have to monitor that. Look, to be honest, I never really expected them to go on such deep playoff runs. I just didn't think they had the depth to complement their top-end talent. But, Connor McDavid just proves it every year that he doesn't need that much around him to go deep in the playoffs. And, maybe this year is no different. Maybe, he'll work with what he has in front of him, and he'll carry this team back to the promised land, but I'm just very pessimistic in terms of the Oilers. I still have them making the playoffs. I have them top 3 in the Pacific, obviously. I think they'll comfortably sneak in. Too many concerns, in my opinion. Really just too many concerns. I can't quite get there with them this season. I think it's only natural that they probably should take a step back. Maybe not in the regular season, although I'm not super high on them. I think playoff-wise, to go to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals is nearly impossible to do, and especially just given the lack of depth and support for this Oilers team around McDavid and Draisaitl, I'm very doubtful that they're going to do anything once they make the playoffs, but I still have them getting in. They're in a weak Pacific Division, so I have them 3rd. Now, my top 2 in the Pacific, I could make an argument for either of them, but ultimately I'm going to say that the Vegas Golden Knights will get 2nd in the Pacific Division, but have a really good season. 107 points. When you add a 100-point player in Mitch Marner to complement already the deep forward group that they have with Jack Eichel and Mark Stone, William Karlsson, Thomas Hertl, Pavel Dorofeyev, who came off a 30-plus goal season, and Ivan Barbashev as well. Like, such an amazing, amazing forward group that they have. One of the best in the league, if we're being honest. Deep at every position, not just forward. I mean, despite the loss to Alex Pietrangelo, which it should affect them a little bit, they still have a really solid decor. Like I mentioned with Shea Theodore, huge fan of his game. I think he's one of the best defensemen in the league, most underrated defenseman in the league. Noah Hanifin still there as well, and he's very solid in a top 4 role. Zach Whitecloud, Jeremy Lozone, Braden McNabb, solid defense as well. And in goal with Aiden Hill. Now, I wouldn't say Aiden Hill is one of the best goalies in the league by any means, but he can do a formidable job as the 1A in Vegas. So, I mean, honestly, there's really not much for me to elaborate on this team. The Vegas Golden Knights have a bit of everything, deep at every position. This is a Stanley Cup contender. Should be considered one of the favorites to win the Stanley Cup this season. Yes, they lost a little bit of depth, but, I mean, they added Mitch Marner, who's just going to complement their offense even more. Even Colton Sissons, I think, is an underrated signing for that bottom 6. But Vegas, to me, solid team, but I have them second in the Pacific because my hot take of the video, I know a lot of people are not as high on the Kings as I am, but I'm going to say the LA Kings are going to win the Pacific Division. I got them with 109 points. You know, despite the questionable moves they made, especially on the blue line, I got to be honest, still a huge fan of this team overall. I think their roster is very deep. Like I mentioned in my bowl predictions video, I think the forward group on the LA Kings, one of the deepest in the league. Their top 9 is stacked. They still have Anze Kopitar going into his last season, but I still think is one of the better two-way centermen in the league, even though he's clearly like not what he used to be. But with him leading the way, with Adrian Kempe still one of the better wingers in the NHL, one of the more underrated players as well. Kevin Fiala, who's coming off an okay season, but I think he can produce more points. Quentin Byfield could be in for a breakout season. Andrei Kuzmenko, who's fit in like a glove on that top line since coming over from the Flames and then the Flyers. And then guys like Trevor Moore and Philip Deneau on your third line. Stacked forward group, in my opinion. Still got Drew Doughty, even though he's a bit older. Still think he's a solid defenseman. I mean, he was at the 4 Nations representing Canada for a reason. Obviously, he's still highly regarded in that perspective, and obviously still a really solid defenseman. Brent Clark could be due for a breakout season, another young guy that the Kings are going to be building around moving forward. Mikey Anderson's a solid guy too. Again, losing Spence and Gavrikov for Dumoulin and Cody Ceci, could be considered a downgrade, but I still think in the third pair role, that's fine. Their defense is still pretty solid. And Darcy Kemper between the pipes had a really good season. And I don't expect him to be that much worse than last year. Honestly, I still think he's a really good goaltender. I just love the additions they made in terms of their depth with Corey Perry and Yoel Armia as well, playing on likely the 4th line. Solid team overall. I can't say enough good things about the Kings. But part of the reason why I have them so high, I'm honestly, this is more of a gut take. Kind of my heart is telling me that the Kings are kind of all vibes this year. I think in Anze Kopitar's last season, I think they're really kind of going to go for it this year. And we're going to see the Kings have like their best season in a while. Do I think they're a contender? Maybe not, but I think they are a dark horse to make some noise in the Western Conference. And in Anze Kopitar's last season, I think there is a chance they can go on one more deep run. And also, just from a team standpoint, I think the Kings kind of have no choice but to win the division. I mean, you look at their playoff track record the last 4 seasons, out in the first round, all by the same team, the Edmonton Oilers. And if they are in a 2-3 spot again, in all likelihood, they probably will face the Edmonton Oilers again in the first round. And I think a mission for them should be to win the division so they don't have to play them in the first round and they can at least advance and give themselves a better chance at going deeper in the playoffs, because obviously the Oilers have been their Achilles heel the last 4 years. But like I said, I still am a huge fan of the roster overall, and I think they're more than capable than winning the Pacific Division crown, which is why I have them first in this division. I think it's a possibility. So with that is going to wrap up my Pacific Division standings predictions for the upcoming NHL 2025-2026 season. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments and what you think about these predictions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And let me know your standings for the Pacific Division this season. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, click like, click subscribe if you liked it even more, and I will talk to you again in the next one.